Hello and welcome to another episode of CardsCast. On this episode of CardsCast is a Cardinal Conversations style interview with Thomas Mitchell from BBC Surrey, who we've had on a few times in the past. I think the last time was at the start of this season, a couple of games in. So always good to have you back, Thomas. Thank you for joining us. Just a quick brief one before we get into today's pod, which is going to be a preview of the Aldershot game and a look back kind of at Woking season so far. We spoke quite early in the season, Thomas, and it's kind of been a bit of a mixed bag since then. I know you do a lot of the home commentary, so you'll have seen not many wins at home.
Yeah.
But there's been a few ups and a few downs. Looks like we kind of stabilised a bit in recent weeks.
Yeah, I think it was the Carlisle game I came on just after. I think they're playing the West Ham under 21s that night in the National League Cup. So there's been a lot that's gone on since then. I mean, I'm thinking back right at the start of the season, there was 4 defeats on the spin. I was really fearing that if they don't get their act together quick, it could be a miserable season. But then there was that nice little run of form. Actually, it was the York draw. It was the draw against York, which got the first point on board. And I thought that was a positive, real positive step. And I felt like they could really go in the right direction. Got the win at Morecambe, and then a solid draw at Halifax. Unfortunately, couldn't win that one. But that final win against Gateshead, I remember that. That's been the only home win this season. But that one, I really thought at the time that could be a serious springboard to try and push right up the table. But then, again, the form kind of wilted again. Again, there was a couple of disappointing away defeats, Yeovil, Bourne Woods, and as you mentioned, lots of home draws. I really look at those Sutton and Truro games as being at the time real killers to not try and get away from that relegation zone. And again, there was a 3-0 win against Solihull Moors where, again, I thought that could maybe be a springboard again, but they just couldn't build on it. And I kind of think that Brackley 6-2 was awful at the time, and obviously missing out on the FA Cup money and just the prestige of still being the FA Cup and that hope of getting to the third round again. But I think that's actually turned out to be, a real big turning point this season, because I think it's what in hindsight now, it's what the team needed, because since then there's been the fantastic away win at Altrincham. And so obviously, you mentioned about the draws. Everyone's getting sick of drawing, but I think I still viewed the Rochdale and Southend games, Southend scored a last goal equaliser, it's still positive. Well, certainly the Southend draw was more positive than the Sutton Truro ones, for example, and they surrendered leads in those ones. I felt it was a positive performances against top 7 sides in the league. And then, and obviously, I felt they needed to go back up, though, with a victory at Tamworth, which is a really tough place to go to. And they did that superbly. I thought that was a real solid outing that day. But obviously, disappointed the weekend. I felt Boston, that was the chance. Neil Larley, when I spoke to him after the match, was really disappointed that they couldn't get those back-to-back wins. That's something that's quite big for the side, because I think that was something I felt that was lacking at times. Although they didn't lose a lot under Neil Larley, sort of the second half of last season when he took charge, I felt there was never those big run of wins they got together. I think that's what the team need next for me to go to that next level. But overall, I mean, sitting in 15th place, 22 points, it's now a solid gap, I'd say, on the bottom 4. Obviously, couple of defeats, you maybe socked right back into the mix. But for now, as we speak, I think things are looking more stable and solid, because I was really fearing the worst that Brackley game. It reminded me a lot, actually, Michael Dawes' last game, the 4-0 hammering. You felt the writing was on the wall, and although maybe Neil has that experience in the bank, and I felt actually Neil Larley kept them up in a little bit more convincing fashion than Michael Dawes did. And as I mentioned, just general experience management. So I was actually kind of hoping, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they got rid of him because the results weren't good. But I'm actually felt now, especially the benefit of hindsight, obviously, that I think they made the right decision of sticking Neil Larley, because it's worked out pretty well in the last few games since that Brackley defeat.
Yeah, as you say, that does feel like a bit of a line in the sand, the FA Cup game. So, good to see some improvement since then, definitely, because you say then it was hard to see where that was coming from on that evening, certainly. So, I guess actually talking about kind of teams that have changed managers and also had a bit of a kind of turbulent time of things this season. Obviously, you work for BBC Surrey, and although Aldershot isn't in Surrey, that is one of the clubs that the BBC Surrey covers. So you will have quite a good idea of what goes on there and kind of the ins and outs. And obviously there seems to be loads going on at that club. Obviously the ending to last season, beating us in the trophy semi-final, and then going on to win the trophy, which was obviously a great achievement for them, and we're nowhere sort of near the relegation zone in the end, a little bit like us really, where although you're sort of down there, separated by just a few points from the teams that went down, we were both sort of safe with kind of a few weeks to go really, barring kind of a mad run of results and stuff like that. So obviously it seemed like in the summer they kind of kept things together, but the start of this season has seen a lot of shifting around. What do you think about their start to the season? I guess you kind of maybe look at it in two sections really. I guess there was what kind of happened under Ridlington before he left. What did you kind of make of the initial start to the season from them?
Yeah, they were absolutely mad, weren't they? Because they just concede loads, but yeah, scorelines. They're real actually entertainers of the league. You think that they beat Solihull Moors 5-1, Morecambe 4-0. Actually, I was thinking, could Aldershot be on the up this season? Because I was actually at the at Wembley for the FA Trophy game. I was covering Whiteleaf that day in the VAR, so I sat there watched the FA Trophy final, and obviously it's painful for the Woking fans there, but obviously it was credit to them. It was an unbelievable atmosphere, and I was thinking it could be a real big springboard for the club. And obviously I was thinking I wish it was Woking there that day, of course. But yeah, I was thinking they could come to the season with real momentum, and I felt those early wins against Solihull Morecambe, I thought that would be real chance for them to push on, and they had a few draws since then. And I think up until I think they beat Hartlepool in September as well, and they were looking good. They were looking good to that point, but there was some rough defeats for Tommy Widdrington, though. The Oval 4-1 and the Halifax 4-2, and they got hammered at Southend. So it was just the manner of the defeats as well. And I think I was surprised at the timing when Tommy Widdrington left, but I wasn't surprised overall. I felt that was the direction it was heading in. The Aldershot fans, they were starting to turn on Tommy Widdrington, and although he won them the trophy, I could kind of see, you could see where they were heading with the manner of defeats, and it just wasn't stable to continue scoring loads of goals. But just you need that defensive stability, and that they simply didn't have that. So I thought Tommy had done a really good job getting them on the cusp of the playoffs in the 23-24 season, and then winning them the FA Trophy last time out. There was some great memories. They had a fantastic FA Cup run as well. So I think overall he did a great job there. But I think now obviously having John Coleman in, I think that's a steady pair of hands. A lot of people looked at his most recent jobs though, not doing so great. So again, there was a little bit of apprehension there, and he's had a few accusations. He only works really well at Accrington. Stanley just seems to be perfect in with that club, and can he succeed anywhere else? That's the question that's hanging over John Coleman's head. There's no question he's a really good, experienced manager. Obviously, he did have the blow going out the FA Cup away from home to Weston-super-Mare, but I think he's had a really, really tough run of fixtures, though. You look at some of the teams they've played: Scunthorpe, Bourne Wood, Forest Green, Rochdale, all top sides in league. So you can look at the game on Saturday. They're not coming in with a lot of momentum for sure, but again, if there's a game where John Coleman wants to get that first win, if he could cherry pick a game to get that first win, it's at home to Woking, isn't it? And I suppose that'll be the nerves maybe coming from the Woking side of things. It'll be typical if he gets his first win as Aldershot manager against Woking. But so it is an interesting situation at Aldershot. There always seems to be something going on there. Again, some people from the outside view them as a bit of a basket case at times, but I think I have to say, I think John Coleman, in time, I think he will be a decent appointment. Obviously, they are right down there at the moment, but I think maybe some more winnable fixtures. Obviously, the listeners will be open after this weekend that they could. I think Aldershot might start to pick up. I think once he gets his own players in, I think he can start getting going. But obviously, there is a lot of discontent as well around the owner of the club from the Aldershot fans. So. Yeah, I think they just need some stability, and I think John Coleman could bring that. I think at this level, he's not a bad manager to have it all. Again, I said about Neil Lally, there's experience. I think John Coleman is another manager as well. So I think it'll take him time to get going. I think once he gets them going, I think they're capable of definitely staying in the league this season.
Yes, no, yeah, for sure. It'd be interesting to see how it goes. It's always difficult when you come in mid-season. I guess looking at it, one of the things I think I was discussing on another podcast when I was talking to other people is I thought that Witherington might have gone at what was basically the perfect time. As you said, you had that season where they just missed out on the playoffs, which I think they'll be really disappointed. Obviously, looking back, it's a little bit like when Woking qualified for the playoffs and kind of just lost in the first game, and you always kind of look back and it's frustrating because you had such a strong season. And that style was very much like what they had the whole time he was there. Really, he scored loads of goals, conceded quite a lot, but were kind of on the right side of things, but just drifted too much towards the end of the season. But do you think after the trophy win as well, he probably left at almost a perfect time? Because I think if people are unhappy with the ownership and feeling like there's not the backing there and there's not the funding, it kind of felt like he was on a hide into nothing, really, that they were just always going to sort of, probably be bottom third to mid-table at best. But obviously the fans, I guess, expectations probably rose quite a lot after the trophy win, thinking, well, let's kick on. But the reality was probably quite different. So probably quite nice for him that he managed to step away when he wanted to, rather than things really turning sour, and him kind of getting, let go and kind of leaving under a bit of a cloud.
Yeah, definitely. I think, as you said, I think I felt he probably couldn't take them any further. Again, the style of play was really exciting, but he was aware enough that there was fans who I think just they just kind of lost faith now in the style of football and those man defeats. But I think Tommy Witherington made the right decision to walk away. I felt that as you said, that the timing was right, and I just felt he achieved all he could there. And maybe some people with the benefit of hindsight now could say maybe could have left after the FA Trophy victory at Wembley, but I felt that at the time there was that momentum there, and he probably would have felt bring that into next season. And he's had them competing for playoffs before. They could try and get up to the top end of the National League again. But I think leave when your stock's really, really high as well. And obviously now he's at Eastbourne Borough. I think that's a really good club to be. Actually, funny enough, Matt Gray, who I was touting for the Woking job when Michael Doyle went, he actually was at Eastbourne Borough and just couldn't get the results there at all. So obviously Tommy Witherington's come into a tough situation there. But I think he'll do well at Eastbourne. I think he walked away at the right time, and I think just a fresh direction was needed. Obviously, there's quite a few Aldershot fans who still not very pleased, with the direction that the club's going with. Again, there's a lot of fans wanting the chairman out, but again, I think Tommy made the right decision, and I think it's now up to John Coleman to try and get those. He'll be open for the backing and to be open to get the right players in to get their season up and running.
Yeah, it's always tough when a new manager comes in, because I think it's almost like expected that teams get a bounce now, where it's like a bit of fresh energy and stuff like that. So sort of when they don't get off to a winning start, and obviously they didn't under Alan Dowson either, who was there kind of in temporary charge, and that they didn't pick up then, and they've not really picked up so far results wise anyway. I guess performances might be a different thing. So that's always tricky as well, isn't it, where they're just searching for that momentum somewhere. But I guess with so many teams letting their managers go in this league and swapping managers, it can't be possible for every team that sacks their manager and gets a new one, or obviously I know he wasn't sacked, but obviously they replaced manager and got a new one. They can't all go on runs at the same time, and it feels like we've had that a bit of Woking before, where we've you sack, well, one manager leaves, and there's some poor form. You think, oh well, automatically we're going to pick up here, and it doesn't really happen. But I guess, as you were saying earlier, the perfect game for them would be this weekend, especially off the back of the Rochdale. I know they lost at Rochdale, but kind of 1-0 isn't terrible. And obviously, if you've been conceding loads, only one goal to Rochdale's probably an improvement, and then that kind of leads them into this weekend, doesn't it? Where that's going to be such a big kind of cherry for them to aim at. So that it sort of seems like the perfect situation for them. But I guess there will be a lot of nerves around their team with so few wins going into it.
Yeah, most certainly. And obviously, I think they've got to get off to a quick start on Saturday, and that sounds really obvious. But if they let Woking settle into the game, away from home Woking, sure we'll get onto a little bit more in a minute, that they're just so much more comfortable. I think the team now feels really settled and can get into the games, and maybe sometimes a little bit more free at top. Well, I think they've had some really good spells where they've actually knocked the ball around really well midfield. So again, Aldershot, they've got to be intense coming out on Saturday. They've got to get the crowd on side, because they don't. Yeah, things can get really nervy. And although it's a derby and they have the home advantage, yeah, those nerves can creep in. There's not a lot of confidence around the side. They just can't stop losing at the moment. So it's really hard to get out that losing rut. So that they'll be praying that Saturday could be the big turning point for the season. There'll be a lot of Aldershot fans thinking that it kind of has to be. I did hear a couple of Aldershot fans saying on the BBC Surrey on Saturday that actually they would take that down at the moment results. They'd actually probably take a point at this rate. They're losing so much, but I personally think they have to go in and try and win it. But I'm sure Nulali have his plan already to spoil those hopes.
Yeah, it's interesting as well. I certainly want that, because you just want signs of life, really. Because I think it was after the Forest Green game recently where Aldershot lost 3-2 at home to Forest Green, which again was just a vintage Aldershot game from the recent seasons. They were 3-0 down, plenty of goals, but then they got 2 goals, were sort of back in it. I don't think they were that close to nicking a point at the end, but it was still quite an impressive comeback. But I think after that game, I think Coleman had talked about really needing an overhaul of the squad and stuff like that. So even I guess he's looking for kind of signs of life within the squad, and we'll pick him, players that he wants to hold on to and ones they want to leave. But it happens so much at this level, and it's obviously happened at Woking quite a bit last season as well, where you have a relatively big squad and you want to move players on, because to get players in, it's really tricky. And I think we did well at that last season, but it's going to be a big task, and it will take some time. But I guess just looking at the squad they have got, obviously one of the names that jumps out at me is Barrett. But I'm aware he's not played, I think, for the last month, I think through injury. So they're having to kind of find a certain way or a different way to do things, because so many of the goals were coming through him. But what are your thoughts on him and some of the other kind of danger players you think they've got?
Yeah, obviously he is the guy. Example, I think of the FA Trophy final, he's the guy that makes everything tick around the squad. But yeah, I mean, one of the other big standouts, I suppose, he's not scored a bundle of goals, but Kwame Thomas can be a real handful. So you're going to have to be looking at Chinakoli being right on it at all the back three, really. But even I think Chinakoli getting that physical battle, I'm thinking he had a most recent physical battle with John Lewis up top, for example, and that one was a real feisty one to watch. So I'm thinking it's going to be another good one between him and Kwame Thomas. But yeah, to be honest, Josh Barrett is kind of the player to me that stand out massively as well. And if he's not on the side, I don't really feel like they tick the same. To be honest, I mean, Ryan Hill's not a bad player in midfield for them as well. So I suppose they are the two sort of top end scorers for them this season. Kwame Thomas on 5, Ryan Hill on 4. So yeah, I suppose there'd be other threats to look out for. But I feel like the stats don't lie, that the back line is there to be got at. So again, I'm interested to see how Nulali will approach it. Will he want to make things nervous in the start, or maybe in the away team ease into the game? Again, that's up to Nulali how he wants the side to approach things. But yeah, I think when you think of Aldershot, I do just think of Josh Barrett with that technical ability. But obviously, with his recent injury problems, that's a huge blow coming to this one. So they've got to try and find a way to get that service into Kwame Thomas to try and cause Woking some issues.
Yeah, it's always it's an interesting one with players coming back from injury as well, especially coming into a derby or something, isn't it? Because if you kind of risk them and start them, then it could be that they come off after 20 minutes, and then they might be out for even longer. And with the amount of games that you play in this league, obviously that can be a real blow. So that'd be interesting to see that. I guess switching focus to Woking, obviously a lot of our listeners will be Woking fans, so we'll pivot back to them as well. What approach? Obviously, you've spoken about Neil Ardley and what's in his thinking. It's really tricky. I think the general consensus is his approach is kind of a bit caution first, and it probably would be going into a game like this. But as you were saying, the kind of real area to kind of go for it is attacking their backline. But if you're too defensive, you're probably not really going to trouble them that much. So, kind of, what do you think his thoughts will be going into this game? And I guess what can he take from the recent away form, which that's the flip side to what we were talking about earlier, where the away form has actually been pretty good recently. A few wins coming in there and getting goals and stuff like that. So what do you think he can take from those games? And, how do you think he's going to approach it in terms of kind of, going for it or being more defensive in this game?
Yeah, it is an interesting one. I actually think back, for example, the last away, so I think it was one of Neil Ali's really early games at Aldershot, where maybe I felt Woking might have been fortunate to get a point that day, and he was quite cautious. And that one, obviously, there was the blow of having 10 men in the FA Trophy. But I mean, yeah, being the away wins at the moment, that they're racking them up. So you should think they'd be confident trying to get straight at Aldershot. But I personally think actually he will be quite cautious at just trying to settle the side into this one, just trying to have a decent feel for the ball. Obviously, the midfield battle is going to be huge the weekend. I'm intrigued to see who he will start midfield. He had Harry Buteman back in the side on Saturday, sort of playing inside left position, which I know he likes to put him in. He did actually go fought the back on Saturday, which I thought was quite interesting. So he isn't completely one-dimensional, that back three, but I do think maybe back three would be the option that he goes for on Saturday. I'll be intrigued to see if it's I think it will be a Coley and Richards in that back three if he does go with that. But I'll be would it be Timmy Olasino or Tunji Akinola coming to it? I'm not sure, but I personally, I think I'd expect him to be maybe a little bit cautious from the start, ease the team into the game. I quite like to see Tarek Hines play at left wing back. I think him and Drew could cause some real issues. Drew's actually chipped in with a couple of goals this season. So, and again, you're looking at Kelly and Sanderson there. They're two players who can, on their day, absolutely cause some issues for the side. So, yeah, I think the midfield battle is going to be huge. I think Timmy Akinola is someone I view as he's got to set the tone. I've been intrigued if he does start Buteman on Saturday. If he goes a three back, I don't know where he'd fit Buteman. The middle, I suppose. But I think I like Jake Forster-Caskey. I think I interviewed him after the game on Saturday. Forster-Caskey's really disappointed in his own performance. So I think overall he's someone who can make that technical difference. He may be looking at, does he go with Jack Turner in that midfield or Jamie Andrews maybe? I don't know. Maybe he might go with Harry Buteman actually in midfield for experiencing these sort of games. So they're big decisions for Neil Ali to make. But yeah, I think I thought actually in the Tamworth game, wasn't at that one personally, but hearing about and watching a little bit of it back, I felt actually they Woking really got going in sort of after 10-15 minutes. That one, Woking actually played some really good football and were worthy at lead, but then obviously had to grind that one out, although Neil Ali did sight the pitch for that one. So again, they're capable of scoring goals away from home. We've seen 3 at Solihull Moors, 3 at Altrincham. So, they are capable of, once they get that one goal, they can go for the throat. So I think if I could imagine it, if Woking win, I could probably imagine it playing out. Bit of a tricky start, getting through it, getting that opening goal, and then just maybe getting that second 65, 70 minutes, and then maybe getting a third. So yeah, we had to picture sort of what Woking have done recently at Solihull and Altrincham. I think they're more than capable of doing that to an Aldershot side who conceded many goals recently.
Yeah, I think also that they're trying to flip the kind of atmosphere, onto Aldershot. Obviously, it's a great atmosphere, for a derby, and I think that's the one thing I've liked about sort of having the derby back kind of every single year for a period now is it does feel like a proper derby again. Where both teams kind of consider it that, and I think the trophy semi-final was massively that. With like the atmosphere is unreal. You've got to kind of give it to them, but I think actually that can kind of turn against Aldershot as well. You're talking about getting a fast start. I think if Woking can get a good start, and I think everything that's kind of happened so far for them, those doubts start to creep in for Aldershot, and the fans start to get a bit edgy, and that can kind of put pressure on their own players. So that'll be something we're hoping for, obviously, in the away end. And I think after the trophy semi-final game, I mean, giving away 2 penalties, getting a red card, which was obviously later overturned, and conceding in like the 90th minute. I mean, it's like if you're due some luck, I mean, it feels like Woking are due quite a bit. So it'd be interesting to see what they do. It's interesting you mentioned Buteman as well. I think you probably will be looking for some experience on the park. But I'm not sure he fits in into the best 11 we've got at the moment. So hopefully they kind of do go for it. So I guess I must push you for kind of a prediction of obviously you can give us kind of your score prediction, but kind of how you think it will play out on the day. Kind of what team and the style that Woking are going to put out, and how that's going to kind of maybe play its way into a result.
Well, I mentioned a moment ago, actually, if I could picture a Woking win, I could maybe see them getting another 3 goals away from home. But do you know what? Actually, now I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking of maybe an edgy 2-1. If I had to say, I think I could maybe picture Woking scoring first, Aldershot, maybe a bit of sitting off, and we've seen it at home recently. When Woking do sit off and just trying to coast through a game, they do end up conceding. So I wouldn't be surprised, although they've been better away from home, that happening. I mean, they scored the first goal, and Altrincham did respond in that one. So I could maybe see Aldershot getting equaliser, but I could maybe see Woking picking up a bit of energy at the end and get that late win. I think they're under Neil Ardley, they've drew Aldershot, had the defeat in the FA Trophy, so even to even it out, I think they drew the win. Neil Ardley's drew a win as Woking manager at Aldershot now. I think it will be a tight one. It definitely will be nervy, but I think, if that's to make a prediction, I think I'm going to go 2-1 Woking for it.
I certainly won't argue with that. That'd be brilliant if that could happen. And actually, talking about the trophy semi-final, obviously a lot of the players that we've still got were involved in that game. Obviously, Ardley was as well. Bassi was as assistant manager, and this won't come as a surprise to players. So I think that might be something that's quite nice. Sometimes, obviously, at this level, teams swap squads pretty much every season. There's kind of like wholesale changes season to season, mainly because teams just don't keep hold of managers. As we were talking about earlier, it's so many teams sack their managers, and you get to the summer, you have a clear out, you get new players in. But obviously, we do have quite a lot of players from last season. So I guess that one of the benefits you could look at is maybe, twofold really, is the players that were there last season and played, won't be surprised by the atmosphere and the derby itself, but also probably do feel like they need to kind of get one back over on Aldershot. Obviously, that doesn't automatically mean you're going to win the game or anything, but, I think it probably means they're not going to get caught out by anything on Saturday, even if Aldershot have started the season poorly. So do you see that as kind of being maybe a slight advantage that we can take into the game?
Yeah, I actually think, although some people say, well, Woking got revenge, that 3-0 victory a couple of weeks later. I think it's different though. They still haven't been to Aldershot since that FA Trophy game, so I think they can use that to their advantage. Yeah, as you mentioned, Tunji Akinola, Jamie Andrews, Harry Buteman, Tarek Kynes, Will Yaskline. There's a few that featured that day. Timmy Odyssey as well. Del Gorman's still, although he's not on the pitch, I see he's still obviously around the place. So, there'll be a lot of characters around that dressing room who will be reminding everyone of what happened. And I think Woking be wanting that full revenge. I feel like they got half it at home, back in April. But I think the players will really galvanise themselves to this one, and they know it'll be a grind. That a lot of the players know what it's all about. But I'm thinking. I think if Timmy Akinola and Jake Forster-Cassidy, they're two players to look at midfield. They can set the tone. Akinola tackling and Forster-Cassidy with that technical ability to try and pick out the likes of the wing backs, or more importantly, I'd say, I presume probably will be Josh Kelly and Ollie Sanderson starting up front together. I think they'll largely want them now to be that partnership. I think, if they can set the tone, get them going, then I think that'll be massive for Woking on Saturday as well.
Thank you very much for your insights on both teams and the fixture on Saturday. I'm sure a lot of people that are listening to this will be either tuning into BBC Surrey for that game or future games. So they'll be hearing your voice from Kingfield again in the future. But thank you very much, Thomas, for your time. It's been great to have it, and we look forward to having you again on soon.
No problem, my pleasure.